What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Their eerie persistence unsettled their opponents. Adalmann and his team grew weary as they observed the relentless advance of Dagruel's army.
Good grief. Do they feel nothing resembling fear?
Exactly. Normally, you'd expect them to reconsider or pull back for a bit.
Facing an enemy so unbound by conventional thinking was more than a little concerning.
Well, Rimuru-sama's subordinates are similar in that regard.
Gadra kept this thought to himself but instead voiced a different observation.
What really intrigues me is how Demon Lord Dagruel neutralized the void spell, but what about Tempest Meteor? It looked as though the meteors vanished unnaturally.
In other words, it almost seemed as if the spell's effect was nullified. This puzzled Adalmann too. Some of the lower-ranked giants had fallen, but the high-ranking elites were untouched. They had expected at least minor injuries, perhaps something they could eventually recover from, but seeing them wholly unscathed was unnerving. Adalmann and Gadra exchanged a look, hoping to find answers in each other's expressions. But soon they realized they wouldn't get a straightforward explanation.
So, what should we do now?
I used a bit too much mana. Let's fall back for the moment. I'm fortunate that my army is an immortal legion that has no fear of death.
That's true. An undying army of giants is terrifying, but your soldiers are comparable.
The two sighed as they discussed the situation. Just moments ago, they had believed they were on the brink of victory, and the sudden twist left them shaken. Adalmann patted Venti's head and directed her to withdraw. Their mission to unleash extreme magic on the enemy had succeeded. Staying longer was unnecessary. Instead, they needed to hurry back and report the frightening resilience of Dagruel's forces. What truly made the giants fearsome was their unyielding determination and remarkable durability. The opening clash was over, but the true test was yet to come with the larger forces poised to collide. Observing the giants' sheer power, Adalmann sensed that even his immortal legion might struggle to hold its ground. While both sides shared resilience and a lack of fear, it seemed likely that the giants' raw force would shatter the legion before they could strike a decisive blow. That was just the reality of their situation. All they could do was whittle down the giants' numbers by taking out as many as possible.
In any case, we should head back and inform Shi and Dono.
Yes, and we'll need to plan our next steps.
With these thoughts, Adalmann and Gadra returned to report to Shion, considering what the future might hold. Upon receiving the report, Shion pondered her options.
What should we do next?
She wondered. Standing atop the long wall, Shion observed the battlefield from above. She'd seen the extreme magic unleashed by Adalmann and Gadra, and for a moment, she thought victory might be possible. But in truth, a harsh reality was unfolding. Even without Adalmann's report, Shion had sensed the dire situation facing them. 2 hours had passed since the battle began, and now the conflict had escalated into a clash between the main forces. While the chained Titan army seemed to have lost a significant portion of its original 30,000 troops, the actual losses were under 10%. Now, they had formed a spearhead formation with their elite fighters leading, engaging the core of the Immortal Legion. The Immortal Legion's formation was a crane-wing structure, with 2,000 Death Knights in the center and 10,000 Bone Soldiers equipped with special weapons on each flank, attempting to encircle the advancing Titans. Despite their efforts, they were too few to fully surround the enemy. It may have been a tactical error, but Adalmann remained calm.
Is this all right?
Shion asked, a bit concerned.
It's fine. We'll show these giants who don't know fear the true terror of undead soldiers.
Commanding beside Shion, Adalmann wasn't aiming for an outright victory. His objective was to weaken the enemy forces. The real main army consisted of Shion's Yomigari, her Terror Knights, and Rumina's Bloody Knights. In a sense, Adalmann and his forces were playing the role of expendable units. Their mission was to eliminate as many of Dagruel's over A-rank giants as possible or to identify any weaknesses in their ranks. This was the true strategy behind the plan. Adalmann was perfectly satisfied with this approach. It was all prearranged before the battle began. Rimuru's side had agreed on a plan that minimized casualties wherever possible. Additionally, it was a strategic way to assess the giant's strength. The Immortal Legion, being undead, couldn't truly die, they'd simply rise again if they fell. Their immortality allowed them to employ suicide tactics to lure and eliminate giants, aiming to steadily diminish their numbers. Even so, this had its limits. Though the battlefield appeared to be in a deadlock, the advantage was slowly tipping toward the Titans. The Bone Soldiers initiated suicide strikes, unleashing the mana that saturated the battlefield. The Death Knights would finish off any wounded or fallen giants, but unless they delivered a lethal strike, the giants would revive. The problem lay in the giants' sheer size. Standing between 3 and 5 meters tall with thick layers of muscle for armor, it was difficult to inflict fatal wounds on them. Taking too long only risked being crushed in turn. Initially, things seemed manageable, but as the giants adjusted their tactics, they neutralized long-range attacks, preventing any reckless approaches. Any further attempts by the bone soldiers only resulted in them being shattered like brittle wood. As they lost their advantage, the bone soldiers, who already lacked the strength to compete with the giants, became nearly useless. The Death Knights, though still fighting valiantly, were outnumbered and slowly dwindling in numbers. This raised tensions among the Bloody Knights, led by Louie, who felt it might be their turn to enter the fray. Xian was also preparing to deploy her reserve forces, the Terror Knights. The 2,000 Death Knights were largely intact, and adding 3,000 Terror Knights would bolster their ability to contend with the Giants' elite. With only 400 Bloody Knights against 1,000 over A-rank giants, she knew the Yomigiri wouldn't suffice alone. Xian calculated that with 10 fighters for every giant, they could hold their own. Though she usually relied on her own determination, she didn't want her subordinates to suffer needless casualties. Yet, as a leader, she hesitated, bracing herself to give the command. Before she could, Adalmann intervened.
Oh dear, looks like I'll need to step in again.
Having regained his mana, Adalmann mounted Venti's back once more.
You have another plan?
Xian asked, intrigued. Adalmann responded with a rattling laugh.
No plan left, really. At this point, let's see what happens.
With those words, Adalmann returned to the fray. He unleashed a refined necromantic spell he had specially prepared for this moment, Immortal Legion creation. This magic, named after his own legion, was Adalmann's masterpiece. Its effects were awe-inspiring. Within its reach, it revived any fallen warriors on the battlefield, friend or foe alike, transforming them into undead soldiers who would unwaveringly follow his commands. This spell was the pinnacle of forbidden necromantic arts, the result of Adalmann's extensive studies. The magic went further, reconstructing the core of each fallen warrior. In this case, shattered bone soldiers began to reform and cluster around the Death Knights. Fallen giant warriors, as well as those who were still standing, joined them. Thus, 2,000 Death Giants were created. The enchanted magisteel armor worn by the Death Knights expanded to cover the towering forms, some reaching up to 4 meters tall. These undead giants, born from the angered spirits of the fallen, adapted the armor to their own vengeful will. This was all part of Adalmann's plan, carefully crafting the ultimate legion of immortal giants.
You've got to be kidding. Adalmann was hiding a trick like this. Even I didn't know he had this up his sleeve.
Xian murmured, visibly shocked. It was a fair reaction. After all, each Death Giant held over A-rank power.
I can't believe it. I've never been more grateful to have allies like this,
added Louie, who was watching beside her. The tide of battle shifted once more. The giants, who had held the upper hand with their brute force, now faced an even stronger opponent. And unlike them, the Death Giants couldn't be permanently defeated. Even if they were shattered or scattered, Adalmann's powers would revive them instantly. Still, the giants wouldn't go down without a fight. Contrary to previous reports of nearly 1,000 top-tier fighters, the enemy's ranks boasted over 2,000 elite combatants. These elite giants, thanks to their ultra-speed regeneration, healed instantly from any wounds that weren't fatal. As long as they weren't hit with an instant death attack, they remained just as formidable as the Death Giants. Both sides matched each other blow for blow, and the battle settled into another stalemate. Adalmann's actions gave Xian and her team a moment of relief. It was a pleasant surprise that no one had foreseen, as Adalmann had kept this tactic under wraps. He hadn't wanted to stir up any unwarranted expectations, especially since this was the first time his Immortal Legion creation was being unveiled, or rather, it was something he decided to try on the spot. The outcome, however, was as impressive as anyone could have hoped, and the one feeling the most at ease was Adalmann himself.
As expected of my closest friend.
Gadra remarked, clearly delighted. Louie, standing nearby, nodded in agreement.
It's true. The 7 luminaries made such a reckless mistake. I can hardly believe they let such incredible talent slip away,
he said, his tone filled with genuine regret. Louie found himself reminiscing about the past. Back then, Adalmann and Alberto were widely renowned. Adalmann, a prodigy in holy magic and a respected high priest, and Alberto, the most powerful holy knight ever known. Both men had the potential to become heroes, even though neither possessed a hero's essence. Naturally, they had ascended to the rank of sages, and if their paths had remained uninterrupted, they were well on their way to becoming saints. But their exceptional talents had drawn unwanted attention. The 7 luminary clerics had grown envious and set a trap for them, fearing that as Adalmann and Alberto grew stronger, they would become a threat to their authority. In secret, the luminaries took steps to hide their actions from Ruminas and her circle. The incident had been framed as a mission to quell a major undead disaster. However, it was actually a fight against a zombie dragon, engineered by the 7 luminaries, in which both Adalmann and Alberto were led to their doom. Eager to help, they had ventured into the Great Jura Forest for this mission. But when they didn't return to the Holy City, they were assumed dead. Even Demon Lord Ruminas, Louis's master, could not have imagined that they would fall under Demon Lord Kazalim's control after death, or that, through a twist of fate, they would later serve Demon Lord Rimuru. Ruminas was filled with frustration, and Louis felt the same. These warriors should have been part of their ranks from the start, no matter the cost. Now, here was Alberto, one of these champions, engaging in fierce combat on the battlefield.
Wow, so that's Adalmann's subordinate.
Shion remarked, watching intently as she regained her focus.
You can tell from here he's a master of his craft.
Dagura, Liura, and Dabura, standing behind her, nodded in agreement.
Alberto's son is seriously impressive.
He spars with me sometimes, but he is incredibly strong.
Liura added.
Oh, look, he's up against Uncle Glassord. Either one could take this.
The brothers initially seemed eager to cheer Alberto on, but their expressions shifted when they noticed who he was fighting.
This is big. I didn't know there was a giant who could wield a sword like that.
Dagura commented.
Yep, that's Dead's younger brother.
Liura confirmed.
Is second in command of the Chain Titan army.
Dabura added with pride.
And our teacher.
They declared, visibly excited. The opponent facing Alberto was Glassord, a towering giant known for his remarkable two-handed swordsmanship and one of the most powerful members of the Chained Titan army.
A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Jared Bressler, Havox, Speed Saber, Curtis Loban, Judah Herrera, Just a Guy, Nissa LW Hernandez, Jason Martin, Zach Rosen, Jerry Sladek, Ray Perez, Jay, Donald Williams, Day of Light, John M, Godman Gaming, Markithian Tidwell, Adrian, Kumo, T. Bush, JV, Thomas, Christ, Joshua Cousins, Jose Hernandez, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Divine C. Harris, Montyboy98, Ruben, Yuki Iki, Gray, Isaac, Koala King 93, Quilly Buckner, Alver, Darius King, Normal Defate, Vicente Baharias, Joshua Andrade, L, Gary Miles, Dragon Spawn 666, J. Rule, Nate, Leiron Sangkap, Lucas Guet, Jason Martin, Christopher Mash, Charles Bailey, Sky T, Diego Ginoza, Andre Hamilton, Martin Ramos, Guy Ensley, Simon Rode, Emperor WSA, Miko Espinosa, Gobi Lin, Pratik Bandari, Faiz Mansour, Jackson Early, Smexy, Carl Stephen Bernadal, Gareth Hashimoto, Steven Madison, Vasto Lord, Marl Barsha, Ralph Ignacio, Efrain Hernandez, William Locke, Kamal Luke, Jahid Hassan Lipu, Spencer Candila, Ian Sikibiol, Thanakorn Lee Sawat, KACP9R, The Harv, Drayden Yamauchi, Alex Buthanu, Michael Brinkley, Nathan Alexander, Mario Kanoy, Karam Faraj. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.